This is going to be a summary of Chapter 1 of Geoffrey Watt's The Consistory and Social Discipline in Calvin's Geneva. Chapter 1 is The Consistory Encounters Resistance. It opens with these words: "In its efforts to change the behavior and piety of Genevans, the consistory attacked certain misdeeds, such as fornication and blasphemy, that were universally viewed as sins in the 16th century Europe and could have resulted in prosecution in Catholic areas as well. The consistory, however, had jurisdiction over a much broader range of behavior than did Catholic institutions, such as the Inquisition and episcopal courts. As we shall see, the consistory frequently summoned people because of quarrels, whereas Catholics never ran the risk of being called before the Inquisition solely because they were angry with others. Reform leaders in Geneva also tried to root out certain divisions, such as dancing, games of chance, and secular songs, which to varying degrees Catholic leaders had long tolerated. Moreover, Calvin and his colleagues aggressively sought to the elimination of practices that had become an important part of Catholic piety, such as saying prayers for the dead and to the Virgin Mary, and celebrating saints' days. Genevans were forbidden to attend Mass in neighboring Catholic communities, but were required to attend regular services at one of the city's 3, and then later 4, churches. Given the ambitious goals for reforming the behavior of the rank and file, it's not at all surprising that the pastors and the consistory encountered some opposition, both active and passive, to their efforts. Sections in this chapter include opposition to the clergy, the increase in resistance, the influx of refugees, the power of the consistory and jurisdiction over the supper, the riot of 1555 and the defeat of the Perennites, the consistory's expanding power and the persistence of distrust. And then the chapter ends with the fact that so many people were summoned to appear before Calvin and his colleagues bear witness to the general support that they enjoyed in Geneva. So by way of summary, in Chapter 1, Watt examines the resistance encountered by the consistory. The consistory was established by Calvin to enforce reformed moral convictions, obedience to God in Geneva. During its efforts to reform the behavior and piety of the city's residents, the consistory addressed various things that Watt has already mentioned in the first paragraph, but also included blasphemy, in addition to things like fornication, which were universally recognized as sins, both by Catholics and Protestants. Watt argues that the jurisdiction was broader in scope than the Inquisition, which that's of course true, but not necessarily broader in scope than ecclesiastic jurisdictions that bishops had. The conflict that arose, Watt alludes to, is the Genevans had unshackled themselves from the rule of the bishop and the Savoy, but they were reluctant then to put themselves under the yoke of another authoritarian leadership, which they perceived in the consistory. The chapter highlights instances where prominent citizens resisted the consistory's authority. There's examples like François Favre. There's examples like Henri de la Mare. These were wealthy Genevan citizens, and Watt's summary of these events were mostly that he paints Calvin and the consistory as a total monster. However, if you read some of these records for yourselves, the consistory records are available in French online. It's a handwritten French that's very difficult to read, but it can be translated, and Watt has done a lot of that work. What he doesn't include are the consistory records that hold the accounts of these events with, for instance, Henri's time before the consistory. Watt paints it with a very brief brush, as if de la Mare had simply criticized Calvin, and as a consequence, Calvin had him defrocked and removed from office, which when you read the consistory records of 1545, 46, and 47, this particular rural pastor had appeared before the consistory many, many times. And the consistory, not Calvin, but the consistory's assessment and accusation was that he had been slanderous and had done things that he conceded that were wrong and confessed he would stop doing that. But eventually the consistory got to the place where he was removed from office. It's a very different account than you'd find here in chapter 1. Bruce Gore does something similar in his book, his biographical account of Calvin, where the picture painted in the book is very different from reality. If you want a summary of what was going through Calvin at this time, his letter to William Farel in 1546, he addresses Henri de la Marre and others, and the challenges that they presented, the ongoing challenges, because they said they would repent, they promised not to do things, and they just continued to do them and appeared before the consistory again. So this is a quick summary of chapter 1. It's the resistance that the Genevans had in the inception of the consistory and the consistory's authority in the church there at Geneva.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.